Can you hear me okay? You start the meeting, can you guys hear me okay? Perfect,
Yep.
thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody, to the meeting, the May meeting of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Lisa and Jordan are joining us on Zoom, as well as we have Nick on Zoom from O2. Welcome, Nick. As is our habit, can you just go around the table and have everyone want to introduce themselves for a moment, starting with you, Gary.
Carrie Tuckett, deafblind intervener. I am Derek Harmon.
Jonathan Bird, committee member. John McConnell.
Diane Morales, accessibility coordinator.
Kevin Flannery, co-chair of the meeting and also the site plan committee and member of the.
Carol Magnan, committee member.
Greg Kohler, committee member.
So the Papa is checked back. Look.
Secretary of the planning. I'm Sierra Mitchell.
Welcome. Let's call maybe order and I would like to thank Derek for preparing the last 2 meetings. Thank you. My absence, everybody tells me things went extremely well. And the first item on our agenda then is the approval of the minutes. I trust everybody has had an opportunity to look at them. Are there any errors or omissions? If not, can we get a mover and seconder? Ready?
I'll move, Mr. Chair.
Carol, second, that the minutes of the April meeting be approved. All in favor?
Aye.
Very much. We also, as per our fantastic, everyone has a declaration of conflict of interest. And once again, a conflict of interest only occurs if you or an immediate family member has pecuniary interest. In other words, if there's a reason coming here today, you can make money. Does anybody have a conflict of interest? Seeing none, we're going to move right on. I'd like to welcome Nick to our meeting. Nick is like the consultant with the city on our water plan contest. You're welcome. I think you either have it. I'd like to welcome Nick O'Donnell. We know it. And how do you say your last name? Can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry, it's cutting out a little. It's a little bit hard to hear. I don't know if the mic is close enough, but you can try again and I'll see if I can make it out.
We're just gonna move the mic here.
Perfect.
That's helpful.
It's about the same, but that's that's okay. We'll try and make it work.
To our meeting, we do appreciate you taking time spent with us. For the benefit of everyone around the table, Nick is the lead consultant with the city on our new waterfront development plan. And accessibility is a key issue with people that it is with us. We're going to talk a little bit later on about how we can work together. But Nick, did you have a short presentation for us?
I do. So I can try and walk through that now if that's okay with you guys. I will try and be as quick as I possibly can in terms of going through quite a bit of information. And if at any point anyone needs me to describe anything in more clarity, please just jump in and stop me, because otherwise I will just continue to blaze through this presentation probably too quickly. So feel free to stop me, because I've done this so many times that often I will go a little too quickly. So let's just talk about where we are in the process, and I'll get into things in more detail. So as you guys may remember, I have presented to you previously, likely it was in December or January, and we were in the process of garnering feedback from the community through a survey and some pop-ups throughout the city. From that time, we had about 960 responses to our survey in the first round of public engagement, which is quite fantastic. That's a very, very good turnout for a project of this scale and prominence in the city. And what we've done since that time is developed a report around what we heard from that engagement and what that meant for us moving forward for the overall design. And we took all that information into consideration. And now I was just in the city a few weeks ago. Diane was there and presented some of the updates to the plan of where we are. And this is a draft plan. This is not the final yet. We have another survey that is live, and we did an open house at City Hall, which had about 40 people come through it. And the survey is ongoing and has over 600 responses so far. And it will be up on the city's website until the end of May. I think it closes the 24th of May. So that's to say, if after this, if you haven't taken the survey, please do so, because it does help us greatly in terms of feedback and amendments. But we heard a lot of great feedback from our initial round of discussions and presentations with stakeholders and city staff. And I'll go through where we are today in terms of the overall plan. So one of the major things we heard from initial feedback was about connectivity and movement between areas of the waterfront from where we're looking at in terms of our scope, which is the Canal District, all the way to the old hospital site. And what one of the major things is that the hub trail isn't often clearly defined. It does jog and maneuver quite a bit. It moves you up to, Foster Drive to Bay Street in certain circumstances, and doesn't keep you along the waterfront edge. And often it is difficult to get from one location to another in a very clear and concise way. So in our research and in our history and design work that we've done around the world from waterfront design perspective, is a major notion of a continuous waterfront promenade. And hopefully you guys can see that on my screen in yellow. But essentially what I'm pointing at here is that along the waterfront's edge, we are going to keep a continuous promenade walkway that will have a variety of elements associated with it. There will be lighting for safety. There will be benches and seating areas. There will be tree planting along that walkway for shade and microclimate for seasonal conditions. And this is really the jumping off point for how we begin to think about the enhancements of the waterfront's edge, and then other destinations that we're creating along the waterfront. So that is there's a lot more that goes into this, but that's a very general description of what that is. Now, in terms of the destinations, I won't spend a lot of time on this particular slide, but what we're just showing is that we have done a lot of site analysis. We understand the existing assets that the city has, and we are layering on additional assets from what we heard from our engagement and what people have suggested or requested or described as things that they desire to happen along the waterfront. We've taken all that into consideration and started to lay those out in a particular manner. And what I'd like to describe now are some of the sort of big ideas that are governing the enhancements to the waterfront. So The upper left image on the screen is the notion of the continuous waterfront promenade. So again, this is a very specific type of promenade that has a certain ground plane pattern to it. It might have a unique paving pattern like you see here on Toronto's waterfront. It uses the maple leaf, but there's other ways that this can be conceived. Of course, we're not getting into that level of design, but we're trying to give everybody an understanding of what the continuous promenade is. So it's a very branded element of the waterfront, and lets you know that you are on Sault Ste. Marie's waterfront and you are along the water's edge. Again, that has lighting associated with it. It has guardrail edge protection so that you can't just slip into St. Mary's River. That's very important. And we have, of course, seating amenities, other typical infrastructural elements such as garbage receptacles and other things associated with it. So that is sort of a major defining moment. We have next underneath that is the notion of cantilevered outlooks and marshes. Cantilevered outlooks are integrated into the promenade itself. So there are no grade changes associated with these outlooks. They are extensions of that promenade out over the water. And that is just for different vantage points and different perspectives to engage with St. Mary's River, watching the ships, many other things associated with that, sunsets, and just general opportunity to have a different sort of vantage point of the water. When we do things like this along the waterfront's edge, there's great opportunity for habitat creation, which we heard a lot about from the community as well, in terms of creating habitat, softening the edge condition of the river, a little bit more green expression along the river's edge. Next to that is really about moments to touch the water. And this is an important slide because areas where we are touching the water, there is one area that is not fully accessible just due to spatial constraints, but all the other areas within the plan that I will show shortly have ramps like you see on screen, and are often also associated with terraces that people can sit on and walk down, to either launch a canoe or kayak or touch the water in a very particular fashion. And that would be in certain areas where water levels are already shallow and there are no major currents associated with these locations. Above that is the notion of a major destination floating swimming pool out in St. Mary's River. Again, this is right off the promenade, and is a real pool. It's not necessarily river water, and it's a very unique sort of opportunity to engage with the river in a very unique way, and becomes a major sort of community gathering point. Any questions so far? I'll keep going. To the right of that, yeah,
Where you go down and you can touch the water, what kind of shoreline
correct.
is it? Sand or rocks or?
Yes, so areas, I'll show you in a bit more detail, but where we are, the areas where you can go down and actually get into the water, we have selected very strategically, and they are areas where there is existing sandy bottom. And that's specifically in the slip beside City Hall and Clerk Park and along the front edge of Clerk Park as well. Those areas, if you go look at today, water levels are very shallow and it is sandy at the bottom. But that's not to say that there's not other ways when you get into more detailed design of treating the bottom in a specific way. But for now, we don't conceive of adding sort of major rock in those areas because then it just makes it a bit more challenging for getting into the water.
So between City Hall and Clark Park,
Correct.
isn't that water stagnant?
No, it is flowing. And it is clean and it is flowing. There's current in there. It may not be visible, but there is movement in there, and the water does not stay in there. It does circulate.
So are you gonna have a slope to get down? I think it's kind of squared off, isn't it?
We are yes, let me get into more details there so I can
Okay.
explain that. But we are carving into the edge and creating terraces and a slope.
Okay,
Yes. So we're not keeping the condition the same. Um, So the image to the right of the swimming pool is about a destination play area for families. And that's something that, again, we heard a lot about in the public consultation. So there's very unique destination playgrounds being designed around the world. We've been a part of many. And we want to bring some of these ideas to the Soo and understand how these can be designed with, indigenous culture, with the history of steel production, with the history of art in Sault Ste. Marie. There's a lot of ways that these playgrounds can work themselves and become very unique destinations in the city. And then, of course, retail activation along the waterfront's edge in the bottom right corner is a very important component of places to eat, drink, gather, and really activate the waterfront's edge. So this is sort of our overall scope, so to speak. And then we have a very core focal area that exists from the Bondar Pavilion to the Bush Plain. And this is sort of a more detailed design component of the waterfront itself. And I will go through all of these in great detail. So in terms of the Bondar Pavilion, not much happening here in terms of engagement with the water, but we have introduced, and you see the waterfront's promenade edge along, and you will see this basically along the entire waterfront. But what we've really done here is created true pathways within the park so that you're not traversing lawn. In order to enter the Bondar Pavilion from Foster Drive. So we have created pathways within the park system to get you to the pavilion, to the waterfront's edge, and we have activated the marina edge side of the Bondar Pavilion with an area for pop-up commercial retail activation for year-round use, but also associated with the Bondar in terms of events and other things that are happening within the pavilion. So that very, very quickly is essentially a very low impact sort of update to the Bondar site. It's functioning quite well. It's successful. We feel that the enhancements here are really about just circulation pathways that allow you to get from Foster Drive into the pavilion in a bit smoother of a fashion. So you're not just walking on lawn, for example, which does provide challenges for a variety of different users. So just in terms of some imagery of look and feel, again, the notion of the waterfront promenade and what that means for the whole site, the notion of pathways within the park, and this idea of a pop-up retail area that could take many shapes and forms, whether it's shipping containers, whether it's an area for permanent food trucks. There's a variety of different ways that this can happen. But gives a little bit more activation to the park, especially when there are events happening. We'll move over to what we're calling the Civic District, which is the area of City Hall and Montana's. So this is an area where we have made quite a few upgrades to the waterfront edge, but also to the area between City Hall and Montana's, where we have a gathering area, we have a wood deck. This is an area where we do have terraces down to the water, and we are landing on sort of more of a gravel condition. This is one area where we are not truly touching the water. And we have an enhanced sort of fishing area and a cantilevered outlook in certain areas where the edge conditions are already giving us the sort of shape and form that allow us to do that. And then we have given the idea off the waterfront's promenade to have a major cantilevered bridge that connects you directly from the corner at City Hall to Clerk Park. That's not to say that you can't continue along the waterfront promenade and come into Clerk Park. It's just a different opportunity that provides a unique sort of architectural piece to the waterfront, and again gives you different vantage and viewpoints over the river's edge.
is
Again,
that
just
gonna
some
be
general.
like a bridge from City Hall to Clerk Park? Is it like a bridge you're
Correct.
putting? Is it
Correct.
gonna be similar to the one you got on the other side of Montana's?
No. No, it would be a much, it would be a much more architectural and sculptural sort of bridge. It is a pedestrian bridge, but it isn't going to be, you can see it here. This one, is a bit different, right? It's just a certain way of construction. We don't know exactly what this will be, because we don't get to that level of design in a master plan. But we see this as a major sort of architectural focal point. This could be a wood bridge. It could be, it could be conceived in many different ways. It could be very sculptural. There's a lot of different ways that this could be designed. Any other
Okay.
questions?
I think we're okay to proceed here.
Okay. So just some general imagery on sort of look and feel of flexible gathering spaces, a wood deck, that is flat, but you can it's an opportunity to gather, to have potentially tables and chairs and other things out there, for people to come together and view the river in a different way. We are looking at sort of water terraces at the edge of the wood deck itself coming down. Now these ones wouldn't touch the water like you see in the image, but we are keeping a certain look and feel that is a bit more natural material in this way. A more enhanced fishing area that has some terraces that people can view and fish from different levels and different tiers, and then creating a lot more habitat along City Hall's edge condition, because we know that there's already issues with the structural wall. So it's a great opportunity to soften that edge and create a little bit of habitat.
I just have
Lisa,
a
go ahead.
question.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep.
I'm just, my concern is just more with, our winter, the ice, materials. I've got, a neighbor who has that kind of stonework and getting a lot of crumbling and some ice wedging and things like that. So what are we thinking about in terms of materials, especially with our winters and the ice issue?
Yeah, I don't know what kind of material your neighbor has, but we've done a lot of this work along the Bow River in Calgary, here in Toronto, where we do get similar conditions of ice buildup and ice booms. And we've used, sort of stone terraces like you see here, and they are very robust. But again, understand that this image is maybe a little misleading because it is going into the water. At City Hall, there would be more of a gravel condition at the bottom, and then it would come down into the water. So you're not getting right down into the water. But even if you were, the way that it could be designed, the way that it should be designed and detailed in the future, it would be robust enough to take any sort of ice or other winter conditions. That's not, from our standpoint, that's not a concern, because we've done these sort of things all around all different areas of Canada.
Great. I apologize for my dog barking. People aren't allowed
That's
to walk
okay.
into our house.
Don't worry. Don't worry about it. It's
He
all
owns
good.
the
It's
street.
all
He
good.
owns the street.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
That's right.
Thanks,
He's
Nick.
doing what he's supposed to. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on now to Clerk Park. So we can talk very high level, because Clerk Park is actually where a lot of things are happening. Um, First and foremost, again, what you'll see here is that we are introducing park pathways. So park pathways, again, are really important to allow people to circulate through a park, not on lawn, to have a hard surface condition that allows accessibility through the entire park. Very similar to what we're thinking in Bondar. But here it plays a variety of different roles. A second role is that it creates a series of rooms within the park, and those rooms can then be activated with events, displays, yearly things that are happening in parks around the world, right? So these can be programmed in many different ways, and the park pathways help define rooms where that happens. Now, the third reason for putting in some hard pathways within the park is really about the skating loop that is so beloved in the city. Everyone knows that this winter was a real challenge for skating loops. Here in Toronto was the same way. They almost all shut down early, were shut down at various times of the year. So what this allows you to do is glycolically freeze the pathway in the winter so that you can have a permanent skating loop. And then there's no issues with dealing with temperature because you're controlling the temperature of the pathway itself. So that's really important. Now, in terms of the previous question about how we're dealing with the edge condition, there's some better imagery on what this will look like. It's not necessarily a perfect representation of them, but there is a series of terraces and there would be a ramp condition coming down that would get you to the water level in the canal area. So again, we're sort of carving out that area of river edge, so to speak, and we're redesigning it so that it has terraces, it has accessibility, and it really becomes an area to sit, to touch the water, and to launch canoes and kayaks. That sort of condition is also running along basically the entire edge of the waterfront up until where the residential happens. And again, I'll show you some imagery on this, but there's a series of terraces, ramps, and planting pockets within that bring you down to the water. And this is an area, again, where you're truly touching the water because the water is shallow here. It's got a beautiful sandy bottom. It's a great opportunity to interact and engage with the water. And again, this was something we heard a lot of in the open house and the survey. You can see the idea of the floating swimming pool connected to the promenade becomes a very unique sort of focal point of the waterfront for families, for tourism, and there's a variety of different ways that you can treat these in the winter because it is a pool, so you can freeze some and have sports and different things, different events happening on them in the winter. One could potentially be a hot tub in the winter because you can control temperature. So there's a variety of different ways you can use this seasonally. And then area 5 and 6 are sort of a combined element in a way. So we know the art gallery needs a new space. So we have given them a new sort of architectural form that has a little bit more exterior component to them so that they can display art externally and not just be interior to the building. And that would again be associated with the destination playground. And the reason that they are together, because if you can see the sort of lower middle image here, what you're showing is a destination playground here. And you can see this is an example again from one in Toronto, but there are many of these in North America. But you can see how creative you can get with what these destination play spaces can be. You can see this big sculpture of a bear, the big sculpture of a moose. There's some indigenous culture in these as well with different huts and teepees for different images for this specific playground. But you can imagine how you can relate some of the history of Sault Ste. Marie, some of the art that's happening in the art gallery, and how you could portray that into a destination playground that becomes very unique and an opportunity for a variety of different age groups. And then you can start to get a sense of the type of terraces coming down to the water. Not a perfect representation of how the ramp would integrate, but I will show a different image of that shortly. And then the notion of the art gallery that we really see needs to be a major sort of architectural focal point of the waterfront because it will be a newer element of architecture along the waterfront, and it needs to have a very specific presence in order to be a true destination along the water's edge. So that is, I am going to pull up a quick image right now of how we see the ramp getting integrated into the terraces, just so everybody sort of understands. And again, ignore the materiality, but you can imagine that as you terrace down to the water, where if you follow my mouse here, there is obviously a ramp that's connected. So the ramp runs sort of parallel to the terraces and cuts through them. And then you can design a specific landing moment at the bottom that then you can interact with the water or not. Yes, go ahead.
You're looking at a different screen than we are. We're seeing
Sorry.
all the image of our pathways and loops. the river pool. I think I think you and I are looking at a different image right now.
Oh, okay, hold one second here. Yes, thank you for telling me that. I likely shared a window. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, okay. we're
Okay.
reading. Okay,
Okay. So I'll describe that again. So you can imagine the terraces here. Again, this is a much harder interpretation. We don't want it to look this hard. In all these little gaps, we would have planting pockets and other things happening. But you can see from the edge of the water here running up is a ramp, and that ramp sort of cuts through the terraces. And that can happen on multiple sides so that you can come to a major landing at the bottom. But this is a way of providing an accessible river edge that allows you to get down to the water, and integrates both, stairs, terraces, seating areas, and a ramp condition. So I just wanted to share that because we haven't necessarily integrated all the imagery into our report just yet, based on where we are. Sorry, I'm going to share my screen again to go back to the presentation because I just want to finalize sort of the last district that we're focused on. And this is the Suncor site. And again, the city doesn't own the Suncor site yet. So this is a very high level basic concept, but the notion here is turning it from a brownfield to an eco park. And this would be done through enhanced planting, wetlands, etc. And then there would be a series of boardwalks that are all connected to the continuous river edge promenade that are elevated above the Suncor site itself, so that we're not digging major footings and other things and disrupting the land too much. And then the notion of a series of biodomes, and these biodomes work very nicely with what is happening in the bush plain in terms of the exhibit of bugs and amphibians and other things. So because that's happening in the bush plain, we want to bring that idea of sort of eco zones and ecology together with these biodomes, which allow you to display a variety of different plant material from ecoregions around the world, so that you can have, you can have jungle habitat, you can have, desert habitat, and you can display these in these biodomes because of how you can control temperature and just some general look and feel of what some of these boardwalks, like the notion of boardwalks being not necessarily on the ground plane of the Suncor site, because we want to be low impact. And then you can see how architecturally unique the biodomes can be in terms of an architectural focal point along the waterfront, but then of course draw of tourism and spending along the waterfront. So that is essentially where we are. And again, as I noted, we're gathering feedback, and then we're working towards a final master plan towards the end of June. And with that, I can open it up to questions, and hopefully I'll be able to hear them.
Carol, go ahead.
Back in January, you said something about emergency stations. How are you going to be putting that into that? Or where are you going to put
So
what is like?
yeah, so those will be, so those are very detailed, but those will be in the guidelines. So what we also have to develop here is a package of guidelines. So what we have to understand is the level of design in a master plan doesn't get into the detail of locating necessarily light fixtures, for example, and therefore, and benches. Like, we don't lay those out necessarily in a master plan level of detail. So what we do is we write about them in guidelines. So we will write about emergency call boxes, and we will write about guidelines on lighting. We will write about guidelines on site furnishings, and we will write other guidelines around safety, security, edge conditions, to make sure that, as you're walking along the river edge promenade, for example, that we clearly show that there's an elevated barrier along the edge, and these sort of things get described in a package of guidelines. And then basically what would happen in the future is the master plan itself and the guidelines would be handed to a design team, and that design team would take those and utilize them when they're going through a detailed design exercise, and ensure all the elements are incorporated. Does that make sense?
But you're doing all the paths and stuff, right? Like
We're
you're just-
notionally showing the pathways. We are not detailed designing them.
No, but if you're gonna have an emergency station somewhere, okay, we gotta be
Mm.
able to get to it, so I don't know. Do you have any paths that are gonna go to this emergency station that you're thinking about? or-
Okay, so
Because we gotta be able to find it, right?
well, let me clarify the emergency station. So
That's what I meant.
it's not one station. It's a series of, they're essentially a series of poles. And if there's an emergency, you can push a button on the pole and that would go to the emergency services and they would talk to you live through that and then would dispatch if major safety or somebody was injured or something was happening. That's how they work. So essentially they're emergency call boxes and those call boxes you can push a button on them and it calls police, 911, fire, ambulance, etc.
Okay, that's
So
what I
those
wanted.
would
to know,
those
actually.
would happen. Those would happen. There should be some in the park. There should be some along the waterfront's edge. There should be some in Bondar. I mean, again, we will write guidelines around them, and then actually locating them is a whole other story. It's a much bigger component.
Okay.
Other questions, folks?
I got one.
Go ahead, Doug.
Is there gonna be a washroom set up in?
Great point. Yes, I did not touch on that. I apologize. It's a very good point. It's not necessarily going to be here, and I didn't label it, but hopefully you can see my cursor. But between Foster Drive and the parking lot of the seniors' home, basically at the end of the slip between City Hall and Clerk Park, we are imagining a washroom, change room facility that would be associated with what's happening with the slip, potentially the pool, the skating loop. We definitely heard that there needs to be washroom facilities, changing facilities, so that, for example, if you're coming here to skate in the winter, you might want a place to, put your shoes, whatever it may be. If you're coming swimming, you need a place to change. So we are considering that there will be a fairly sizable facility that will have a series of washrooms and change rooms.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Nick, I know that, you're focusing on the publicly owned lands in here, but, do you have any thoughts concerning like Station Mall, other private development opportunities that maybe?
I love that you asked that question. We absolutely are. So this is something that is in great discussion, right? Because the city doesn't own the land. So we have been working with, for example, the Station Mall. We're working with the Canal District as well. What we get from them in terms of their plans is still, to be determined, but let's talk about the Station Mall because you mentioned it specifically, and this is actually a big move that we are looking at. So as you know, St. Mary's River Drive runs along the waterfront edge and curls up and touches Bay Street. We are actually proposing that St. Mary's River Drive along that side, along the river side, gets closed off permanently and gets turned over to public realm and gets part of an enhancement. So the road becomes part of the promenade and becomes a much wider promenade. And then we line it with retail, commerce, activation. These are the areas where you could have restaurants, food and beverage. It could be pop-up. There's many different ways. And we've been talking with the Station Mall about it. They are very receptive of the idea. They like the idea. There still will be access through the mall parking lot. It will just happen very tight to the mall, and then it will curl up to Bay Street. We will maintain the entrance and exit of the Delta Hotel, but essentially between the exit and entry of the Delta Hotel and this curve at the edge of the Station Mall, we will close down St. Mary's River Drive and turn it over to pedestrian use.
I thought you said that every thought with the gateway, while they're at it.
Sorry, can someone repeat that? It was quite hard to hear.
Sorry, Nick, that was really interesting. Station Mall
Okay.
comments. Do you have any other comments relating to the gateway side? Or is that
gateway site.
shown at the moment?
Yeah, so you're talking about the site that is where the pub is, the skating rink, etc.
Actually, it's the city-owned property across from the casino. I think it's in 10 acres, it's totally vacant. Has a creek that runs through the middle of it.
Oh, so okay, sorry. So that is this site here north of City Hall?
Nick, it's Peter here, I think, so.
Yeah.
We locally call it the Gateway site, so it would be just east of the Canal District. It's the site that, when we were chatting with Tony Porco, the site that he's gonna send us the footprints
Gotcha.
for.
Okay,
So
yes,
that's
sorry.
buried in there,
That's
yeah.
that's this site here. Yes, sorry. Yes, so what we've done is we have extended the promenade all through the edge of that site. There's some fine tuning of this promenade to happen here, and it also loops around where the pub house is, the event venue and the wine bar and the music conservatory. But where the gateway site is itself, we have talked to Tony here and we are waiting for his footprints. It is a site that he is dealing with, and we are going to input some of his plans into our project here so that it's all integrated. But we specifically are not designing that site. That is, I believe, his ownership, and he has plans ready to go for this site that we are going to integrate.
Still city owned, Nick.
Oh, it is city owned. So is he leasing it? Okay.
No.
But
city owned.
Oh, it's city owned. Okay. Okay. But there is plans for it. Oh,
Yeah.
Needless to say, we are going to integrate plans for that site for sure. But for now, what we've been able to do based on the information we have, is extend the promenade as far as we can along the edge there.
Greg, go ahead.
Just in general, it sounds like a wonderful transition of part of the town that needs more connectivity. There are
Mhm.
interesting pockets, but for those of us who don't drive, the easier to get around without having to drive sounds
Correct.
wonderful. Do we have
Correct.
any idea of timelines on this, gentlemen?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that in detail. So what we're doing as part of the next stage as well is we are putting together a phasing plan and a cost estimate. And basically what will happen is we will work with Peter, with Travis and the team to define a phasing strategy that makes sense, that is sort of palpable to the city. And it will have costing associated. But understand that because there's a lot of private sites here, there's a lot of moving parts here. You know, we see this as a long-term vision. Like most waterfront plans that we do, we talk about a 35, 40-year vision, but there's lots of things that happen, right? It's not to say that a lot won't get done in a certain time frame, but what we will ensure is that there are very critical projects that happen early on that we call quick wins that will really set the tone and allow development to continue through revenue enhancements, through opportunities to get different grants and other things, because we're doing things properly and the right way that are parlaying into different projects down the road.
Piggybacking on your success, your early successes lead to your later successes. Gotcha.
Exactly, you got it.
Other comments?
I think the sequential, we need to look at this so that some people may not even see the actual graphics on the
Yeah.
screen, so what we can do is set a date aside. In the future, like, for us to take a look at the maps a little bit better and so forth.
Yeah, so Nick, can you send me the slides and I can share
For
them
sure.
with the plan subcommittee? And then
Absolutely.
we'll look at it a little closer and provide more detailed kind of feedback as
Sure.
well as that the rest of the committee shares.
Sure, no problem. Not a problem at all.
And do you have a deadline for feedback?
Yes, ideally, we would like it by the 24th of May.
That's good.
Okay,
Because that's when we will take the survey, we'll take stakeholder, I mean, we have stakeholder comments already based on the conversations we have, but if there's others that come in, we want to be able to have it'll take us probably about a week to summarize that. At least depending on the outcome of how many comments from the survey come in. But even in the first round, because there were 960 so responses, it took us quite a bit of time to because what we like to do is we like to lump and group comments so that we can, give graphs and percentages of people commented on this many times, those sort of things. So it's quite a bit of analytical downloading and grouping. So it does take a bit of time. So the 24th would be great because then, we can try and summarize that by the first week of June so that we can basically spend the entire month of June sort of fine tuning the plan and getting to the final submission at the end of the month.
Peter, Peter, are you in contact with the consultancy discussions or?
Yeah, so it's beside myself and Travis Anderson, but I think for this group, you can go through me, absolutely, like Diane and then myself, yeah.
Nick, you're probably aware of this. But the city of Toronto, actually, Western Development Toronto came out with the guidelines for accessibility in December.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
They're quite good. We've seen them.
Yep.
They're very helpful. A couple of miscellaneous thoughts, and I without getting into the weeds too much, but I tend to do that. The earlier question about the study of water, next to the city hall, hopefully the pump in there still works. That was actually built, there is a sort of a little wetland in there. That was
Yes.
built, funding from Brookfield Power. And
Yes.
as part of that, there was a pump put in that is under the walkway, I believe, and simply.
Yes.
Water out of the river year round, so that is moving water.
Correct. It is, so what, let me see if I can go to the, yes, so what we are doing, there is moving water there, so there is a culvert that exists here today that allows water to go into that wetland. Now that based on that functions on fluctuating water levels, so there is current and there is movement of water here, and the pump is there because when water levels get a little bit lower, the flow obviously does slow down a bit, and it doesn't always work its way through the culvert. So that's what the pump is for. And that pump actually takes water and pumps it into the wetland during lower water level conditions in order to keep the wetland environment happy. So what we're actually proposing to do here is connect the canal to the wetland, so that there is permanent flow of water and movement. It keeps the wetland quite happy. And then all that would happen is there'd be a little bridge that would basically bridge that cut, so to speak, that would connect the two together. So a pump would no longer be required.
And thanks, Nick, and your comment on the water levels, like it changes a lot. I believe Frank.
Yes, it does.
On the last Google here, he said the most that he had seen between high water and low water was 19 feet.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yes.
a bit of a design nightmare.
Yeah, there are definite challenges with water level fluctuations. But we see the notion of connecting the wetland to the canal, that even if water does fluctuate, what would the wetland would go through a little bit of a redesign too in that instance, where you would design for those fluctuating water levels a bit better because they're connected, and then you would design the different levels of water to have specific plant material, so that when water recedes, for example, the lower plant material is still happy and the upper plant material can deal with both wet and dry conditions. So it's really an ecology and planting sort of update, but those are things that are quite simple And then that would keep the wetland pretty lush and happy year round without needing a pump.
Thanks, and my last comment is, strong personal preference that I have many years ago, not that many years ago, I think everybody at this table probably remembers that. The gentleman who owned Canadian Tire gave the city $75,000 to put a fountain in the St. Mary's River just off.
Mhm. Yes, yes.
And eventually, the city managed to take it out.
Mhm.
And that's really unfortunate because we have some great pictures of that fountain.
I've seen them. Yes, I've seen them.
Yeah, I was just wondering if maybe moving forward, you could give some thoughts to a fountain either on the land or in the water.
Sure. Yeah, we can look into it. We actually thought, we actually at one point thought that that pump was still operational and we were going to consider certain things. Our understanding is that it's not. It would have to be sort of a new system, but we can, you know, again, provide your feedback and your comments, and we'll definitely look into it and see if there's a way to do it. There's also been talk about, you know, with some indigenous representation about the eternal flame. Are there ways to combine those things together? It could be interesting. So, you know, we're happy to look at those things and see if there's ways that we can get creative and reintroduce some things if they're really desired by the community.
Did you have another comment?
No, sir. Just,
No, we're all good.
thank you.
Thanks very much for your time, Ed. That's great.
Thank you.
At least we'll be in touch with Peter. Peter will be in touch. Anything
Sounds
else
good.
When you're floating design ideas around, if you want to run them, and I guess this is a comment to Peter more than you, if you want to run them to the accessibility committee, maybe we can quickly get to where we want to go and get some really good stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks once again, Ed. Really.
No problem. No problem. Thank you guys for your time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Okay. Take care. Bye, Diane. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Can we take a short personal break, 5 or 10 minutes here? Let's do that. We'll see everybody at about 5:03. Perfect, thank you.
If you've not yet had a
Yeah, I have to leave at 3:30, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Welcome back, folks, that's terrific. Moving along, we're to the other half of our new business, item 5.2 on the accessibility week, and Diane, go ahead, you be coming on.
Sure, so this is some activities that, after through discussions with various committee members, has kind of come together into an event that's gonna happen at, City Hall on May 29th, which is Red Shirt Day. We have the presentation from Liza Sturkey, of Easterfield. And so Red Shirt Day is a day for action, inclusion, and accessibility. Rework. And everybody, t-shirts have been ordered. They weren't here for this meeting, I was a little bit disappointed, I probably would have been, but they'll come for the 29th event. So it's gonna be 10 till noon at the Civic Center. As much as possible, while I'm wearing a red t-shirt, everybody is welcome to come, and I encourage you to attend if you're at all able to. There'll be coffee and snacks and donations to Easterfield for the coffee and snacks. And then there'll be some tables with experiential learning opportunities. So maybe Carol will be demonstrating how to navigate with white cane and crutches.
I think it's called wayfinding.
Wayfinding, yes.
Find my way.
Find your way. And there'll be a couple of other vision law exercises there or experiences. There's an app on I don't know, Google Play or the I don't even know what the iPhone is, the Apple store, that you can you download this app, and then when you open it, you choose a vision disability, and it stimulates, and there are, I don't know, 30, 40 different conditions that you can choose, and then you use the tablet to look around the space. So that vision loss disorder, that you can see how a person would be experiencing their environment. So that's kind of cool. There's a couple of people from vision loss rehab that will be coming to attend as well. It's intended, the intent is for staff of the city to learn. It's not so much about a public event, although there will be people in City Hall. It's going to be in the lobby. And if there are people there and they want to do that and learn more, they're welcome to, but it's not advertised to the public. It is intended for city staff to come and visit, come in and see about disabilities. There's going to be a timeline of important moments in history for people with disabilities, so that we can see where we've come from and the things that have happened that were important milestones and where we are today. It's not intended for that, because it's mostly an indoor kind of thing, and we really want staff, it's part of a larger training plan for city staff. There's a lot of various different trainings that will be happening throughout the year and probably well into next year as well. Not to say that that's not important, that is important as well, but that's not the difficult part is here.
Then can we get, or can the members get access to the app even after the event?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, there's a public app, I can share that.
Okay, great.
I've got a question for you, Mr. Chair, to our accessibility coordinator. Diane, do you know if the front door is gonna be working?
I don't know that, I know, well, computer might have more.
I don't think it will, no. It's getting close. I don't, you know what, I'll get an update so that you have a time frame. It's getting close.
Yeah, so too, but it looks like you can see where they've got the frame of the stairs in place. I don't know about the elevator with the pathway there.
Okay, no, thought it would be nice to add that in with the accessibility.
Yes.
It's up to be a good time for an official opening if it was operational.
We're operating.
I don't think it will be.
Okay, but Peter, these things take, when you ordered the elevator, some of us had our
The elevator's in. The elevator is in and functioning, I understand, but
But it's not like,
open to the public yet.
they're not,
And the stairs aren't in yet.
they're not, yeah, not.
Like a public washroom.
oh, yes,
And do they have a toilet that's higher than 4 inches?
Coming across that a lot lately.
Yes, actually. You see on those little guys, even me, your knees are up to here. What do they call it, squatting pod? Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Get out. Yeah, and to get down, you're going down and. Forget about a little bit on, yeah. So that's our accessibility event, for this year. It's something last year we didn't do anything, this year, you know, we're starting on an event, next year we may be able to build on it as well. So that's the plan, if you can attend, it would be wonderful to have as many committee members as possible attend as well.
29th, what day of the week is that?
Wednesday.
As long as it's not Tuesday, I'm generally available.
Okay, and if you need help to book Caraba, let me know. We can
29th,
do that.
We're not anywhere near the foot, that's, we'll be 14 days out next week, so we're good.
That's right.
I will remember, this time I will remember.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks, Diane, that's a really good, really major event, I know that's. Big time. Hopefully, if anybody who can go, I think that'd be kind of key. And it really is a great place to start with city staff, like training city staff on what they need to do. Any other comments? Moving along then to our accessibility plan ideas, and we just want to talk for a minute on where we on that. I know you're just putting this out there.
Again, that's right. We talked about, I think, the last couple of meetings that we're looking for feedback from the committee on what kind of projects would you like to see in the plan, or what kind of gaps are you encountering in the community? How will we do with the corporation, though, not the mall, not the shops, not the restaurant, because we don't have influence on that, but with the corporation. What are we missing? What do we need to do? Throughout the summer, I hope to be doing an audit with a summer student of all city facilities and parks to see where the barriers may have popped up or maybe never were dealt with in the first place. So that'll inform us of an awful lot.
I've been working with the Active Living Center to try to create different events for deaf, blind, visually impaired, hard of hearing as well. And here I would actually identify that the Active Living Center on stage, the door does not stand out so that when you're dropped off by a Caraba, there's not a clear easy path and recognition of the door to enter the building. So we're actually going as a group, as a Canadian Council for the Blind group on a tour in June. However, that was one thing that Carol did. And she's right, because even myself, I had gone into the apartment building by accident or wasn't able to find that front entrance. The back entrance is great, and it has a wheelchair program leading up to the main door, but it's kind of more of a challenge.
Like walking into the window like I did when I first came here at the other end. I can't find the door, and the windows look like the doors, so I walked towards the window because they're shaped like the doors. To me, they are anyway. I'm trying to open up the door, but it's not a door, it's a window.
Needless to say, you didn't get in that way. did you?
No, I came in and I found the door, and I told you about it this when I first came here a few years back, and says, wow, good thing I was able to find the door eventually. I think somebody might have told me I wasn't at the door, I can't remember. But the same thing happened at the senior center downtown. To me, the way they're designing the buildings, that looks like the door,
Right,
and it's
so there's
not.
no visual cues.
No.
to Say, this is what you're aiming for.
Other thoughts?
Diane, while I'm sitting here, I just mentioned it to Peter. The internal signage, the GFL. I love that building, we spent, I don't know how many hours. But when it was being used for the clinic, or the
Oh, the vaccination.
vaccination clinic, there were people who are not regular users of that building, didn't realize we had access to elevators. That, now, those are, I know that the folks who routinely go to the Greyhound games know that building as intimately well as I do, but not every citizen routinely goes to those events. The signage in there was something that I know it was flagged for them, I think for budgetary or other reasons. How do I put this delicately? I think that could use an upgrade.
Mhm.
Or a flat, because there've got to be improvements. Because you should, like, not that I minded giving directions, but when the health unit staff didn't know exactly how to use, they weren't sure where the elevators were to get equipment moved from point A to point B. And that, I think it may have convinced them not to reuse that building again, because it was sort of awkward they weren't comfortable there. Now, I don't know if you, in your other capacity, have ever heard that story, but it seemed they moved back to their own quarters as quickly as they could. If that building's gonna be used as an emergency location, I know that's part of the plan. We've got to do something about that.
Thank you, Craig.
That's a really good point.
And I'll throw one more out there. When the emergency coordinator was here, I was on the Zoom, and I don't think I was able to get this message through. Convince that staff that we're next to in their radio in their getting messages to the public, they only focused on the Canadian-based radio stations. How many people in Sault Ste. Marie listen to WSO 1400, the whole setup on the Sioux Michigan side? I know that we have a mutual aid agreement with Chippewa County Sheriff and Fire Department. So we should be able to get a communication, because those stations are actually staffed by human beings on a regular basis. They're not all electronically lifted. They're not a repeater like Q104, and the Canadian stations are not fully staffed all the time. They're on tape delay from Southern Ontario.
That's the emergency.
The
I think they've got something going on this weekend at the station mall, don't they?
They
On
do.
Saturday?
Yeah, I have a flyer here. Towards the end, I was gonna remind you to let people know about it.
Okay.
You know, that was the one thing, Carol, I was,
Mhm.
because I saw the clip and I couldn't get, I remember, I know Councillor Turco was being nervous by my suggestion, but the reality is we have access to the American. We've sent fire crews to cover them. When they went down to New York City to cover off for the funerals, we sent a fire crew to cover the city of Sioux Michigan. We have a mutual aid agreement between the two municipalities, and I know they do the annual meeting between the two city councils. That's not just an excuse to have a nice chat full of late, they do that too. We should take advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah, okay, thank you, noted. Right.
That's just something that, sorry, Mr. Chair, for going on a bit.
No, I think that.
But that
that's a
one
good
was,
point.
that one sort of stuck in. Had I been in the room, we might have had a more. It's only downside with doing things online is you don't always, things move quickly enough. I didn't want to take it back.
You know, Craig, that's exactly why this is on the agenda, for those kind of comments. So this is the opportunity, if something gets in their mind, this is an opportunity to bring it up and we'll take action.
And I'll take feedback at any time, either by phone call or email or a drop-in, absolutely.
Locked bathrooms in the library. I know that was done for security, that's been done for security reasons, which I'm aware of, but it's always public access to public facilities, Diane, is always that's a delicate balance, I know. But make sure the key is, people know where it is at all times. I wish.
I used it twice and I had no problem my tenant just went into the library, went up to the courtesy desk. Actually,
It's proper. Then is that place properly staffed, Derek? That's just, you know that, I will share, it's an old story. It predates the GFL, goes right back to the old Memorial Gardens. The all provincial hockey tournament had been there the week before, and I was working with Bob Tulloch. In and out of the old converted room closet, which was the accessible restroom in the Memorial Gardens. Following week was the job fair for the casino when they first arrived. Every disability group in the city, CNIB, March of Dimes, Hearing Society, all hands on deck, because they want every client on the job list and there were people there to cover the tables. The staff had forgotten to open the accessible restroom. The key was on the belt loop of someone sitting in City Hall. Now, I don't think that would happen today, but that's where that story came from, because I understand why they have to lock it. I understand there are concerns about goings on at the library that are beyond our scope here. And I'm a person who believes in mandatory drug treatment, so please, that's a discussion for another day. That's why they've had to lock the restrooms, I understand it.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. It's a really tough balance that they're trying
Yeah.
to find, and actually I'll be chatting with the library staff.
And thank you, Derek, for your information. I didn't know it was working. I just knew that they'd had to lock them, and I was wondering what the protocol was, and is that protocol public? Is it public knowledge among the general public, not just those of us who have sort of, I won't say special access, but it's something that we hear about because people are careful to tell us.
Yes, and I'm sure there's signage at the bathrooms to say they're
See.
locked, please see.
Okay.
Whatever the
In
process
Braille?
is. Pardon me?
In Braille?
I doubt it.
Yeah, I know that, but but we could look into that as well.
And level 1 or level 2 Braille, remember that?
I do tactile.
When we put the Braille on this office door, we put it in as level 2, and we were politely told by the Canadian Council of the Blind staff that no one in town could read level 2 Braille.
My mom did.
And we're sitting here going, we should have probably asked these good folks before we it was the most current Braille, that's what we went with. And so three of us went with each other and I won't repeat what was said after the meeting closed. It was whoops, a few other things.
Well, it's because a lot of people just don't know, right?
Yeah. Well,
We don't make mistakes. And we fix.
yeah, that was, well, Don, the thing is, kind of, in retrospect, ask first.
Mhm.
That was our own mistake.
Any other ideas for our accessibility plan updates? Things that need to be corrected?
Any word on the benches? Because a lot of people tell me about stuff that they don't like, right? So the benches that you've got, especially on Bay Street and all this here. I think we talked about it at a meeting a couple months ago, that the benches, they're, you know, the ones that were, you gotta sit way back and you got the handle in between and
Yeah, it's only one handle. Yes.
And if you've got a bad back, you really don't have anything to lean your back on, and it's way too far back. And their legs aren't that long. Like there was a couple people that mentioned to me, you know, like they've gotta figure out something better for those benches.
I'm trying to remember, Diane, with Queen Street, we're doing it's a slightly different bench, or is it the same design but with the arms? With the 3 arms, I can't remember now, we looked through so many different things,
I know, and I didn't see the final design. I know we talked about the must have backrests.
yeah.
And must have handles or arm rests
Mhm.
and one on each side.
Yeah, I feel like we might have went with a slightly different design.
Yeah,
They were partly meant to be a little uncomfortable, is that fair, Don? Is that a fair statement?
I think it was the design. Wow.
Maybe it was the visual.
It was the visual part. There was an open house down at the downtown association office. And they
Yeah.
invited people in to vote. And I think that was the winning design.
Right, I know that like the the individual lattices so that the skateboarders aren't doing whatever it is they do, and
Right.
there was all little, and then the armrest was meant so that people weren't laying across them. I seem to think that that was maybe part of it.
Unless I'm very tired.
Yeah, you need so I know that we definitely have that, and I feel like in the end, we settled on a slightly different design to what you see on Bay Street.
It's the back though, it's the back.
It's
It's
kind
the
of
back.
non-existent.
Yeah,
It's
and
too far back.
it's too far back or non-existent, so let's
Yeah.
say I had, I don't know, well, even what my foot weight is now. I need kind of like a little push, right? So
Mhm.
I can kind of lean back and push
Yeah.
type thing, you know?
Yeah.
So with no back
But some,
rest, there's no way that they're really, they're seem kind of
Yeah.
pointless, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we did something a little bit different. Then the bench program is a different program that you see along the Hub Trail. Those benches are again, a different design that has a pretty solid back to them.
Mhm. I mean, the handle, the armrests are great, you can put your coffee on there, balances it
Yeah,
just
that's
right,
true.
you know, but it's the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that we have anything in place for a replacement for relatively new. But you're right, they're not very friendly for seniors.
No, and if they're gonna do downtown and they're gonna put benches down there,
It's not gonna be that kind. It's a different design.
I seem to, I think we did something a little bit different with the ones on Queen Street.
Not too late to change it now.
It's not too late. I'll go back and look.
mhm,
Okay.
okay.
Then you guys managed to report on our barrier removal updates with our people.
Yeah.
Which we have done.
Yes, we did do, a mini blitz, 2 weekends ago, with the April.
actually,
It was on 7/28,
almost 3
almost 3 weeks ago now. My goodness, time flies. It mainly centered on the John Rhodes and the Northern Community Center. There was a very large event going on between the two locations. And I know in the past, we've had quite a bit of access aisle abuse or misuse. Here, I believe that the signage, the newest signage. My experience, even when I've been busy here after work, is that nobody is parking on the access aisles, and if I'm floored it works, really.
Really?
It seems to be working. And furthermore, so this blitz that was conducted was through the evening during what would probably be the busiest time, resulted in very few fines being issued. I think there were a total of 6 tickets, but only 2 of them were for barrier-free parking errors. The rest were other parking things. And of that, both had accessible parking permits. They either didn't put them down on their visor or put it up on the dashboard, so they were both I don't know, canceled, whatever the right terminology is. So there were no barrier-free parking infractions. Right,
So I think what you're saying then is the CTV quite often goes around town. Picks a person to talk to and does a little expose, so I think our little expose, even though it's 30 seconds or less.
I think the actual news article was about 10 seconds long.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, so I'm quite happy with that. We will ask for parking blitzes to happen again through probably more, during maybe events at the roads or events in various different places. And I really hope that's something that we'll start seeing more often, is that there are no or very few infractions. So.
I think, Diane, as you said, I think the signage may actually, getting that correct. I think most people tend to, once they understand it, because that's the access aisle is it may not be new, But to older individuals, it's a newer. Listen, handicap parking is still a new thing in certain circumstances.
You're right.
It was not something, when these folks were 16 and given their earned their driver's licenses, it wasn't even thought of.
Yeah.
And part of that is education. I mean, the piece that Derek is referring to, I know Sue today ran a small article. And I think they're called online articles. I've used an old term, excuse me. And that there was positive feedback from that in the comments, which I always read, comment section, that there was an acceptance, this was wrong, it needs to be dealt with. That's a significant change from where we started.
I think you're right.
Evolutionary, not revolutionary, but because people's reaction was when it was explained to them what the rules were, said they should be known. But that's a reinforcement, and the signage thing, I think helps. Because you gotta be current, you don't. But hey, positive report on parking.
It is, yeah.
Okay. And the only other thing on our agenda is our plan. Maybe report.
Okay,
Anything I will leave there?
yes, you can. On April 12th, we had an opportunity to go visit the Airport Development Corporation of the city of Sault Ste. Marie. They allowed us to go into the airport and they asked us about certain accessibility issues in the Sault Ste. Marie Airport, because they now have to create their own plan for the standards. So a couple of the areas that we went to security, we went to the different spots in security. They do, like, if somebody is feeling that they don't want to be searched in public, they do have private room that they take if it's male, they take females, and the airplane customer to that room, they do a background search. They make sure that everybody is cleared to go through security. And also, we got, or I got to see that they put our electric wheelchairs the batteries have to be disconnected. They're put on a little trolley, type thing to get them out to the airport. They are put in the cargo hold with a strap around an electric wheelchair. Okay, and what we did as well, as we noticed that there were one of our community members who walked the full length of the airport, so they gave us a wheelchair for her to use. Also with Carol, Carol needed some help with guidance issues, so they helped her with that. We sat for a while at the cafeteria and talked a little more, and basically it was to give us an idea of what to expect when you go for a flight, when you should be there, how much information we need to know. And one of the things that we learned was that when they're doing the security check, they must return the mobility device to the individuals upon finishing their inspection.
So some of the devices, some of the more smaller navigation devices or mobility devices were able to fit through the scanners for the airplane, for the security. And they also learned that they had to put it through and then return it to the individual so that the individual could then continue through, the rest of, the security process.
Jordan, do I see your hand up?
No, I think that's a mouse.
Oh, sorry.
It
is.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Craig.
Just one brief comment, Mr. Chair, the additional information. The one thing that I'm concerned about for us as a committee member, the staff at the airport was very clear, they need to know if someone needs assistance beforehand to successfully board and deplane. How do we spread that information to our various networks? Because I think, especially for seniors traveling for medical reasons, it struck me that those folks are not generally used to asking for help ahead of time. It's something that I was trained to do from the time I was knee-high to an ant. And it's part of our, I know the folks who are blind and visually very called mobility training, part of my life experience. How do we stress that message? Because they also pointed out the staff at the airport can't guess. They're not legally allowed to say, although they have staff explain on occasion, they've taken certain judgments. But if you're going to have a positive travel experience, you're going to need to let folks know ahead of time. And I don't know exactly how we're going to get that message through to our various networks. That's the one, that was sort of the, with a wonderful visit, I'm going, how the devil do we tell?
And I don't think that falls on us. I think that falls on them with
Okay.
their accessibility planning.
Right,
Their
but it-
accessibility on their website.
Got you, Diane.
communication.
But it's something we should probably. Don't know, how, I mean, in conversations back and forth, I still think a lot of that, like even the contact information, probably go to every doctor's office.
I think they're working on their website, aren't they too, or?
No doubt they will have to redo their website.
All right, no, that was just the one lesson, Diane, that
Yeah,
was drilled, that was the one thing one of the things I wrote, good. That's not general, again, that's not general knowledge until you sit down and talk to the folks.
But if you order your ticket, maybe when they do the website, maybe, you know, they'll say your destination from to and all this. Maybe there'll be a question. I don't even know if there is a question on there. Do you use mobility devices, or do you know how it's worded? Kind of like transit does for their Parabus or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's just something that I just didn't know how best to. If you're right, it's probably not directly on us, but it's something we have to remind. I don't, because they were very clear that they can't guess. So that's on the person. And I think it's something that we all have experience at this table doing. But
I think Carol's just nailed it, which is they did take it, that's what they were going to mean.
if they're all okay, perhaps. But if we are talking to them again, Diane, or talking to Dorothy, opening with plans, these are things.
Well, see, I think they've got, if you have, I don't know what they call it. You have the need or whatever, or so, and if you travel alone and you need assistance or whatever. So they've got somebody that'll go on the flight with you, and let's say you end up in Toronto Airport, you're there for 10 hours delay or whatever, they've got a room somewhere. They'll bring you into this room. You don't have to go wait out in the airport, and you'll always have somebody on your side. And they'll make sure you eat, they make sure you got things to drink, because you never know, let's say there's a storm out or whatever, there's some kind of delay. Not a lot of people know this exists, because only certain people can access it, but you have to register for that.
That's how do we spread that? How do they? It's the diffusing the information, Carol, is the one thing that I'm concerned about. I can see staff not being able to respond because they hadn't been told, and that's not on them. Do you see what I?
Well, I think it's
No.
somewhere.
I think when you buy your ticket, usually there's a spot you can go through if you.
But
But then again, you know, there's certain responsibilities that the airline has, and then there's certain responsibilities that the airport staff has.
That's-
So going through security is airport staff, but planing and deplaning and like, I think that's more on the individual airline. Thanks, there's probably
that's right.
Mhm.
quite a bit going on.
so that's the tricky part. Not done it before.
Mhm. Yeah.
I've done it
I've done it for somebody before.
But
And it was
let's
a
say,
few years
but
ago.
if you're running into someone, I was just thinking. Person flying to Toronto for medical visit, not by air ambulance,
Oh,
that's,
yeah,
that's a whole
different,
different
that's
kettle,
different,
that's
yeah.
a whole different kettle
Mhm.
of onion. But I'm thinking of some of my neighbors there, older folks, English is not the first language. Virtually, and I'm not saying, say did it online, it's their grandchildren who did it for them. Did the grandkids remember their grandma or grandpa? I think that's the,
And I think that's where the airline staff will come in, because I'm sure that happens a lot.
Okay.
Seniors, like you said, seniors don't have disabilities, they have seniors issues. And, that's where the airline will, I'm sure they run into it all the time, and they're probably very sensitized to it.
okay, just that's a delicate, it's the balance of what information do you share, like. Well, on the occasions I had to share information, it's worked perfect. On the occasions where I didn't think to say something, sometimes there've been snags.
Yeah.
And I learned, I think I was 7 when I figured that out, but
And I suspect it happens quite often that someone shows up and the airlines generally are the staff that have to react, would respond and try to provide assistance.
I was thinking if there's some way to get that information out to people like the 55. Active senior.
I understand a little bit. I'm a little bit amazed that there's not a standard regulation in place here, because the issues here that we're talking about are exactly the same issues you're gonna have most airports in Canada, I mean, with few exceptions. Some of the bigger airports. But, I mean, this is really common, so the question becomes, goes back on the airport, goes back on the airline. How are you guys dealing with it?
And our visit was basically, they said, let us know. But the thing is, Dawn, I'm just wondering, relying on the electronics, it's, now not to say all seniors don't have computers, but I'm just saying that there's a gap there. Like, if it's on your webpage, that works well for most folks, but not everybody.
Yeah, I understand, great,
Yeah.
but that problem is gonna be common across the country.
Agreed.
Like somebody needs.
And it will get better because
Yeah.
they are covered by the Accessible Canada Act, and that's
The federal
why
legislation, yeah.
they have to get better at communicating the information, so that absolutely is on them. It's, and they will have to deal with, you know, the odd person or seniors that show up and they're not, they don't know what to expect, and
They've also had a couple of lawsuits that were not very.
yeah.
Famous example out of Vancouver going into Las Vegas, there was a snafu at the Vegas airport, but Air Canada will be dealing with it for a very long time. Sorry, Derek.
For instance, if somebody comes with a walker and does not let the airline know that they need to maybe store the walker and they get there, then they're gonna have to work it out with the airline and say, hey, I don't know if you need to advance the route, but
Maybe not speaking. It's a testament to our speaker. I have to try to do something else. So yeah, it was a good experience. I think the committee members learned a lot, through the site visit, and I think the airport and the airport, or the airline staff as well, learned a lot from, our being there. So it was a really, really good experience.
and they even, we wanted to come to so badly. That they even paid for Carol for, get out there.
And coffee.
And they asked us to come back next year and do another one, so we could see what the program is, and, you know, was there anything else?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Okay. We're.
At the airport, I don't realize, there's been
with the bigger wheelchair, when they're being stored, they have these like reinforced like floors that they can put in there. Cause otherwise, the weight the specific weight, it's a smaller area of the wheel. You know, can be damaging to the fuselage and everything. You know, so they have these like platforms that they can put on, so it kind of distributes the weight as.
Right.
So basically, what they do is because I was supposed to, or whether we went into the actual, conveyor room. What it is they push they never drive a electric wheelchair. They always put it in manual and they always push it up onto a flat surface, which is like a trailer box.
I see that we're starting to lose a few people here, now, so can we wrap up the formal part of the meeting so that people can sit some of the things, right?
Okay.
Derek, did you have anything else on the site plan?
No.
No, I have a question, because we reviewed the people site plan, this new proposal up on regular road. Did you go ahead with that?
Yes, my understanding is that he is. And the change was to push the building.
Yeah.
Towards the road. I think use the building as a retaining wall to the lot to the north that he had bought.
Right, we still got around back.
Yeah,
But, yeah.
but it's, yeah,
He's reduced.
my plan is that he's hoping to build that this year.
Because I know we planted it before, and the prices are stupid.
Okay, and I think a lot of it was that retaining wall, but that it was a separate retaining wall and that's what they, yeah.
Oh,
I got one thing I wanna bring up.
sure.
Can we try and get more money for our committee?
Removal?
Yep. Because
Yes,
it's
we did
really
that.
low. We need more money.
I think.
You would have to, can you hear me?
Yep,
Okay, my Zoom's doing weird things. It kicked me out, so I'm on my phone. What we'd have to do, Carol and the team, is we would have to add a budget request at budget time, and that would have to come from not the committee, but the department.
okay.
Okay,
I think it's done. I think the solution here is to have a really good accessibility removal plan moving forward. And give the senior management team and council an opportunity to see what are we going to do with the plan. So that's really kind of key. It's not simply just saying, can we get some more money? It's what are we gonna do with it? That's why.
yeah, I can't hear you, Dawn, unfortunately,
Sorry.
but whatever we need to do, it could be that we do a motion for consideration in the 2025 budget.
Because if something costs us 13,000 to do and we only get 10,000 for it or whatever, right? You
Yeah.
know, okay,
There would need to be rationale, Carol, so it could be, you know, the cost of, as we know, of doing burial removal has rose by 25%. We have not had an increase since whatever date that is. And I could bring forth a motion, most definitely, at the next council meeting. But I
okay,
would need to know the data, like how long has it been that we haven't had an increase? What is the increase in the average cost? And then we could bring it to council.
okay.
Does that make sense?
It does because, you know, if we can think of a few things that need to be done, I know that it's gonna cost over $10,000 for whatever. Okay, you know, or whatever the price is, we just might need more money, right?
Well, let's, my thinking on this, so Diane and I have had a lot of conversations about this, and we have some ideas for the new barrier removal plan as well, that. You know, I think the budget ask would, from where my thinking is that will coincide with the new plan need. And we have some ideas on how to maybe maneuver some of that around, for lack of a better term, so.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Anything else? That being the case, then we have a mover to adjourn. Derek, and a second here?
Okay.
Thank you very, very much, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Enjoy the rest of your month.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Lisa. Bye, Summer.
Take care. Okay.